The lake had always held a secret rhythm, a subtle pulse beneath the mirrored surface that reflected the sky's moods, the wind's whispers, and the restless stirrings of the forest. Nestled deep in the northern Minnesota pines, the Mason family's lake cabin was their sanctuary, a place where time moved differently, where the chaos of Minneapolis seemed a distant memory. On a crisp early September evening, the fading sun dipped low, gilding the treetops in gold and orange, while the water shimmered in slow, hypnotic ripples. Sarah Mason's fingers tightened around the cold metal of a new padlock. She had spent the better part of an afternoon selecting it, testing it, and now, finally, it was being affixed to the wrought iron gate at the driveway's entrance. Her auburn hair glinted in the dying sunlight, strands slipping free from a messy bun as she worked, her expression a mix of determination and quiet apprehension. "Are you sure this is necessary?" Ryan Mason asked from behind, the steam from his coffee curling in the cool air. He leaned against the hood of their pickup, watching the smooth click of the lock into place. His brown eyes narrowed slightly, concern wrinkling his forehead. Sarah didn't turn. "After last month?" "Absolutely." "Did you see what they did to the mailbox?" Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath the words. "I am not risking another incident, Ryan." "Not here. Not after everything." Ryan sighed, shaking his head, though he couldn't hide the small, wry smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'd have left it." "You always were braver than me," he said softly. "Braver." That word hung in the air like a fragile bubble, shimmering for a moment before the tension pressed down again. Because the calm that the lake promised was always fragile. It had been shattered countless times before, not by storms, not by wildlife, but by Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed guardian of the lake community, whose obsession with rules made her a living tempest. From the shadowed window of the house next door, a sliver of movement caught Ryan's eye. Karen. Of course. Even now, she was watching them, her gray hair impeccably styled despite the late afternoon sun, her eyes narrowing like twin daggers. Ryan's stomach tightened. That twitch of fury across her face was familiar, he'd seen it countless times. The next move was predictable. Within seconds, Karen's phone appeared in her hand, her fingers flying over the screen with a speed that matched the intensity of her glare. She didn't bother with subtlety. Ryan and Sarah exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement that the fuse had been lit. "You've got to be kidding me," Ryan muttered, exhaling slowly. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her hands flexed at her sides, barely containing the tension coiled within. From the distance, the first distant siren wailed, shrill and intrusive against the natural calm of the lake. Karen's voice pierced through the trees, sharp and rapid fire, illegal. Trespassing. Emergency. This is. Ryan's hand brushed Sarah's. "Here we go," he said under his breath. "The fun part." By the time the patrol car arrived, dusk had softened the lake into a mirror of deep blues and purples, the first stars glimmering faintly above. Officer Mitchell, tall and solid with streaks of gray at his temples, stepped out of the cruiser. He radiated calm authority, his presence a balm against the rising storm. He gave Ryan a nod that was polite but probing, as if already calculating the truth hidden behind the scene's surface tension. Karen practically lunged forward, waving her phone like a weapon. "They've illegally changed the gate lock." "I demand action," she shouted, each syllable sharp enough to crack the air. Officer Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, you called 911. Can you tell me why you consider this an emergency?" "They are violating HOA rules." Karen sputtered, the veins in her neck standing out as her indignation built to a crescendo. "This is serious. This is an immediate threat." Sarah stepped forward, calm but unyielding. "Officer, this is our private property. We've owned this cabin for 15 years. The HOA does not have authority over this lock. No crime has been committed. There's no emergency." Karen's face contorted with outrage. "How dare you? I'm protecting the community." Officer Mitchell interjected, voice steady, commanding attention. "Ma'am, changing a lock on private property does not constitute an emergency. There is no violation of law here. You need to leave, or I may have to ask you to do so formally." A sharp intake of breath. Karen's hands trembled, gripping her phone as though it were her last line of defense. "This isn't over," she shouted, retreating to her property with a glare so intense it seemed capable of scorching the very ground beneath her feet. Sarah exhaled slowly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That could have gone worse," she murmured. Ryan shook his head, tension etched into his features. "It probably will," he said quietly, almost to himself. "This is Karen. You lit a fuse, and she's going to burn everything in sight trying to make it look like justice." The lake lay quiet again, but the serenity felt fragile, as if the water itself held its breath, anticipating the next wave of chaos. From somewhere deep within the forest, a loon's call echoed, a mournful, haunting sound that seemed to mirror the unease settling over the Mason cabin. Sarah stepped closer to Ryan, her hand brushing against his arm. "We've weathered her before. We'll weather her now. This is our home. Our rules." Ryan nodded, though the knot of anxiety in his stomach hadn't loosened. He glanced at the darkening horizon, where the first hints of night crept over the trees. "We just need to be ready," he said. "Because Karen doesn't just stop. She escalates. And when she does, it's never small." They stood together, hand in hand, staring at the padlock gleaming in the last light of day. The lock was more than metal and mechanism, it was a symbol of their resolve, of the claim they had on their own lives, their own peace. As darkness fell fully over the lake, shadows stretching across the water like fingers reaching for the cabin, a sense of foreboding settled in. The evening's calm had been shattered, replaced by the quiet promise of a storm yet to come. Somewhere in the distance, the soft rustle of leaves hinted at unseen eyes, and the wind carried a faint whisper of inevitability. The Mason cabin, serene and stoic, stood firm against the encroaching chaos. But outside its walls, beyond the gleaming padlock and the tranquility of the lake, Karen Whitmore's fury simmered, gathering strength. And in that simmering anger, a confrontation waited, one that would test patience, courage, and the fragile line between civility and chaos. For now, the lake remained still, the surface reflecting both the fading sunset and the quiet determination of a family who refused to yield. But beneath the calm, tension built, a silent storm promising that this night, this simple act of caution, was only the beginning. Morning arrived over Lake Pinewood with a gray, misty hush, as if the world itself were holding its breath after the night's confrontation. The fog curled over the water, cloaking the cabin in a soft, silver shroud. Sarah Mason stepped outside, the damp air clinging to her sweater, her eyes scanning the driveway and the wrought iron gate. The new padlock gleamed faintly through the haze, untouched, unyielding. A small sigh of relief escaped her lips, but it was quickly swallowed by a creeping unease. "She didn't touch it," Sarah murmured, running her fingers along the metal. Her eyes narrowed. "But I know her. Karen. She's planning something." Ryan emerged from the cabin, a steaming thermos in hand, his brow furrowed with the same instinctive worry that clung to Sarah. He leaned on the edge of the porch, his eyes tracing the mist-shrouded lake, the trees beyond, and then back to the gate. "We need a plan," he said softly, tension threading his voice. "She's not just going to storm off. She's going to escalate. Trust me, this isn't over." Sarah turned, her gaze sharp. "Then we prepare. No surprises this time. Documentation, security cameras, logs of everything. We cover ourselves before she makes the next move." Ryan nodded. "We've done our part. Now it's about patience." Before they could continue their hushed strategy, a sudden knock at the cabin door made them both start. It was sharp, deliberate, almost echoing unnaturally in the still morning air. Sarah opened the door, expecting one of the neighbors drawn into Karen's orbit, but instead found two uniformed officers standing patiently on the porch. Officer Mitchell, tall, calm, and unwavering, gave a polite nod, accompanied by a younger female officer with an alert expression, Officer Johnson. Their presence radiated quiet authority, the kind that both reassured and warned at the same time. "Good morning," Officer Mitchell began. "I'm following up on last night's 911 call. Are there any ongoing issues we should be aware of?" Sarah explained quickly, clearly, the story of the lock, Karen's complaint, and the fact that no laws had been broken. Ryan added a few details, emphasizing the repeated pattern of harassment.
Officer Johnson nodded thoughtfully while Mitchell scribbled notes.
"Ma'am," Mitchell said finally, looking at Sarah with the weight of experience in his gaze, "this seems to be a civil dispute.
Unless Karen escalates further with threats, trespass, or damage, there's no criminal case here. I recommend documenting everything.
Keep records of any interactions."
Ryan frowned slightly. Documenting, it sounds tedious. Mitchell allowed himself a faint smile. It's tedious, yes, but necessary. Knowing Karen, things will get messy.
The record keeps you protected if she pushes this further. The officers left with quiet efficiency, leaving the cabin and its occupants enveloped once again in the cool, thick fog.
Sarah and Ryan exchanged a glance, a mix of relief and apprehension. The first line of defense had passed, but the real storm, they both sensed, was still looming.
By noon, the fog had thinned slightly, revealing the glimmering lake and the towering pines that bordered their property. The serenity was deceptive. Karen Whitmore appeared at the end of the driveway like a specter, clipboard in hand, her mouth set in a tight, determined line. Behind her, a small cluster of neighbors had gathered, drawn by the promise of drama and the thrill of siding with authority, or at least what Karen claimed is authority.
"You are in violation." Karen's voice rang over the mist, sharp as the crack of a whip.
"This is illegal, and I will not stand by while you flaunt community rules."
Sarah stepped forward, unwavering, her voice calm but firm.
"Karen, this is private property. You have no legal authority here. Leave immediately, or we will call law enforcement again." Karen's face twisted with fury, her chest rising and falling with indignation.
"I will not be ignored. Someone must defend the rules. Someone must."
A strange, unexpected sound cut through the escalating tension, a low rumble, growing louder.
Ryan's eyes darted to the lake. "What?"
From around the bend, a black, weathered speedboat sliced through the fog, its engine roaring across the otherwise still water. At the helm was a man with dark sunglasses and an impish grin, a flare of chaotic energy radiating from him as though the lake itself had sent an ally. "Morning," he called, steering the boat straight toward the Mason dock.
"Heard there's a Karen emergency. Thought I'd help."
Sarah and Ryan stared, stunned. Karen froze mid-step, her face a mask of disbelief and confusion.
Who are you?" she demanded.
The man leapt gracefully from the boat, handing life vests to the couple.
"Ben Carter.
Local Lake Patrol, volunteer, occasional chaos manager.
And apparently, your personal backup today."
Neighbors whispered among themselves, uncertain how to react.
One muttered, "Is this allowed?" Karen's glare could have frozen the mist itself. Sarah's lips curved into a small, resolute smile. "Looks like we're not alone," she said softly to Ryan, her hand brushing his arm. Ben's energy was infectious.
He moved with purpose, not aggression, but a clear message. The Masons were supported, and Karen's theatrics could no longer intimidate them.
"Let's get some visibility," he suggested, guiding them to secure cameras and noting vantage points around the property. Documentation plus a presence equals deterrence. Karen's fury escalated as she realized the dynamic had shifted. You brought someone to intimidate me?"
Her voice trembled, a mixture of outrage and fear.
Sarah shook her head calmly. "No, Karen. We brought clarity. This isn't about you or your rules. It's about our rights, our home, and the safety of our family. That's all." Karen's followers murmured uneasily among themselves.
Some glanced toward their own properties, questioning how far they had let a neighbor dictate fear.
The tension thickened, a fog of social pressure and moral uncertainty settling over the driveway.
Ben clapped his hands together, breaking the hesitation.
"All right, everyone, let's stay calm. We're here to prevent chaos, not start a war. Karen, you may want to leave now before law enforcement is forced to intervene."
Karen's face twisted, her lips pressed into a thin line. She scanned the crowd, her authority visibly crumbling in the face of witnesses, documentation, and the sheer unpredictability of lake intervention. Slowly, begrudgingly, she backed toward her own property, muttering under her breath about community rules and unfair treatment, her power evaporating like morning mist under the sun. The Masons, standing together with Ben, felt the weight of victory, but it was cautious, tempered by the knowledge that Karen's obsession did not fade so easily.
Ryan placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. We've won this round. But this isn't over. She's patient, cunning, and relentless.
Sarah nodded, her eyes scanning the lake, now shimmering in the early afternoon sun. Then we stay ready.
Document, prepare, and stand firm. That's all we can do.
As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light over the mist-tinged water, the lake seemed to sigh in relief, a quiet acknowledgement of the calm regained, for now. The fog lifted further, revealing the serene reflection of the tree-line, the cabin, and the steadfast gate, now a symbol not only of security but of resolve. The escalation had tested their patience, courage, and clarity.
But with documentation in hand, allies at their side, and the unwavering bond of family, the Masons knew they were prepared for whatever came next.
The storm, though far from over, had been met with steady hands and unyielding hearts. Ryan squeezed Sarah's hand gently.
Tomorrow, we stay vigilant. Karen isn't done. But neither are we.
Sarah smiled, the glint of determination lighting her eyes. As long as we stand together, no one can take this from us.
Not even Karen.
The lake, now fully revealed under the afternoon sun, rippled softly, the gentle waves carrying with them a promise. The Masons had endured the first assault, and while the conflict had escalated, they had proven that preparation, courage, and unity were stronger than obsession, fear, or intimidation. And in that quiet, fragile triumph, the lake whispered its approval, reflecting the resolve of two people ready to defend their sanctuary against any storm, natural or human-made, that might come. A night fell over Lake Pinewood like a velvet curtain, the deep blue sky gradually bleeding into black.
The stars blinked faintly through the scattered clouds, reflected in the lake's still surface, which now carried an undercurrent of tension rather than tranquility.
The cabin stood illuminated in the soft glow of porch lights, its walls sturdy, its windows aglow with determination. Inside, Sarah and Ryan Mason moved with quiet, deliberate motions, checking locks, recording details, and reviewing logs they had meticulously kept over the past 24 hours.
Outside, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the driveway.
Karen Whitmore, clipboard in hand, her hair slightly mussed from a long day of agitation, glared across the misty lawn. Her footsteps crunched against the gravel, deliberate and sharp. She was no longer simply a disgruntled neighbor, she had become a symbol of relentless bureaucracy, of obsession unchecked.
You can't do this. You're breaking rules.
Karen's voice trembled, a mix of rage and desperation. Sarah stepped forward, her green eyes steady, her posture calm yet unyielding. Karen, this is private property. You have no legal authority here.
Leave peacefully, or we will have to call law enforcement. Karen's nostrils flared. I will not be ignored. This is harassment. You. Ryan placed a hand gently on Sarah's shoulder, a silent signal to remain composed.
Behind them, the last rays of sunset painted the lake in fiery oranges and purples, the perfect cinematic backdrop for what would become a confrontation neither side could ignore. Before Karen could escalate further, a familiar rumble cut across the evening stillness. From the far side of the lake, the hum of boat engines approached. Ben Carter and his small fleet of volunteer lake patrol boats glided through the water, each vessel gleaming black under the last light of dusk.
Their engines purred like predators circling their prey, yet there was no menace, only an unmistakable assertion of presence.
Karen froze mid-step, her mouth opening in disbelief.
What is that?
Ben leapt from the lead boat with an effortless grace that suggested years of experience on water and in confrontation. Evening, folks, he said with a grin that carried both charm and authority.
Heard there was an HOA emergency. Thought I'd send a little reinforcement.
The neighbors who had gathered behind Karen exchanged anxious whispers, unsure whether they were witnessing a civil dispute or an unfolding spectacle of cinematic proportions. Some glanced at their own cabins, realizing the absurdity of escalating a gate-locked dispute into what now resembled a standoff straight out of a movie.
Karen's jaw dropped.
Her voice rose in a pitch of panic and anger.
You brought reinforcements?
No, Sarah said, her voice calm yet cutting through the night air.
We brought clarity, presence, and evidence. This isn't about intimidation.
This is about ensuring our rights are respected. The tension between Karen's insistence on control and the Mason family's calm resolve stretched across the lawn, a palpable force that seemed to press against the very air. Officer Mitchell arrived quietly behind the Masons, his tall figure authoritative.
"Ma'am," he said to Karen, his voice steady and commanding, "I've warned you.
Leave now, or you will be forced to face legal consequences.
This is your final warning." Karen's face twisted in disbelief.
She scanned the lake, the cabin, the growing presence of witnesses, and her power crumbled under the weight of reality. The neighbors who had once looked to her for guidance began to murmur, questioning her judgment, her obsession, and her interpretation of authority. Ben clapped his hands together, breaking the hesitation. "All right, everyone, let's be clear, the Masons are within their rights."
"Karen, step back. This ends tonight."
For the first time, Karen faltered. Her voice wavered as she muttered complaints about HOA rules, unfair treatment, and imagined injustices. Slowly, almost grudgingly, she retreated toward her own property, her authority evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Sarah turned to Ryan, a quiet sigh of relief escaping her lips. "We did it," she whispered. Her voice carried more than victory, it carried the satisfaction of being heard, of standing firm against unreasonable authority, and of protecting the sanctuary that was their home. Ryan smiled faintly, eyes scanning the lake, now shimmering in the moonlight. "This isn't just about a lock," he said softly. "It's about asserting boundaries, protecting our family, and proving that irrational fear and obsession cannot dictate our lives." The lake returned to its quiet, reflective state, rippling gently as if acknowledging the resolution of tension. The mist lifted slightly, revealing the treeline and the calm waters that had been the Mason family's constant companion through conflict, threat, and escalation. The neighbors who had once rallied behind Karen began to disperse quietly, their murmurs subdued as they reconsidered the spectacle they had joined. Some glanced at the Mason's gate, now securely locked, and perhaps saw in it a symbol of courage and persistence.
Ryan took Sarah's hand as they walked to the dock, the lake's gentle waves lapping against the wooden pilings.
"It feels peaceful again," he said, though a hint of caution lingered in his tone.
"Karen may regroup. She may come back. But tonight, we stood strong."
Sarah's eyes reflected the silver glow of moonlight across the water. "As long as we stay united, nothing she does can change that. This cabin, this lake, this home, they're ours.
And no one has the right to take that from us."
The last vestiges of sunset disappeared entirely, replaced by the cool clarity of night. Somewhere in the distance, a loon cried out, a haunting and beautiful sound that echoed across the water, as though nature itself recognized the Mason family's triumph. It was a small but profound affirmation that courage, unity, and clarity of purpose could withstand even the most obsessive interference. For the first time in weeks, the Masons felt a sense of absolute calm settle over them. The padlock gleamed faintly in the porch light, a symbol not only of security but of their ability to confront fear, harassment, and unreasonable authority with dignity. Karen Whitmore, for all her fury and persistence, had failed to dismantle what the Masons had built both physically with the gate and emotionally with their resolve. They had stood together, documented everything, remained calm under pressure, and found allies in unexpected places. And that combination of preparation, courage, and unity had made all the difference. Ryan squeezed Sarah's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the trials they had endured and the lessons learned. "We survived her storm," he said. "And we'll survive whatever comes next. Together." Sarah smiled softly, leaning into him, their silhouettes reflected in the moonlit water. "We always do," she said. "And if anyone ever tries to take this from us again, they'll see that we're ready. Always ready." The lake lay calm once more, its surface reflecting the night sky, the cabin, and the quiet, resolute figures of Sarah and Ryan Mason. For them, the ordeal had changed more than just the gate, it had tested the boundaries of patience, the depth of courage, and the strength of unity. And in the end, it had proven that some things, peace, dignity, and home, were worth every battle fought to protect them. As the wind whispered through the pine trees, rustling leaves like a soft applause, the Mason family stood together on the dock. The cabin gate remained secure, unchallenged, a sentinel of triumph over fear and obsession. The night had been long, but the reckoning was complete.
HOAKaren had been thwarted, authority redefined, and the lake returned to its rightful owners. And as they gazed across the shimmering water, the Masons knew one immutable truth: their home, their sanctuary, and their peace were theirs to defend, and no one, no matter how loud, furious, or relentless, could take that away. The loon cried again, a hauntingly beautiful call that echoed across the lake, a reminder that balance had been restored, order had been asserted, and the Mason family had emerged victorious, unbroken, and more united than ever.